This is Regina Davis at the NARUC 2019 Summer Policy Summit in downtown Indianapolis. And joining me this afternoon is NARUC former president, Rob Powelson, who is now the CEO and president of NAWC, the National Association of Water Companies. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Regina, great to be here and great to be in Indianapolis. What a great town, and the vibe here in the conference has been really upbeat, and you see the vendors, the topics being covered, a lot of vibrancy here at the NARUC Policy Summit.
Yeah, we've had so far two really great general sessions. Lots of interesting topics being discussed, as you said. And from a water perspective, what are some of the top-of-line priorities that regulators should be thinking about in the water space?
Yeah, so you heard it earlier in the opening session, I love the TED Talk presentation, but our chairman, David Stanton with Suez Water, really teed up this big issue that continues to be an overhang to our industry, and that is the whole issue of the $1 trillion of spend needed over the next 20 years to replace really poorly run water and wastewater systems in this country. As he mentioned, with a lot of lessons learned post-Flint, Michigan, a lot of governors, a lot of legislatures and public utility commissioners who are at the front line of the decisions around these struggling water systems, going about water consolidation policy. And so being here at NARUC, and we're a proud sponsor of this event, the conversation is a very good one. It gives us an opportunity to really showcase some of the real inequities in our water grid. And but to the positive side is the whole conversation around innovation in the sector, whether it's electric, gas, water. We've got a great story to tell there in terms of what we're doing with customer engagement, using artificial intelligence to do predictions on failing infrastructure. And you can see it in the conversations at the Water Committee here today. So a lot of good topics being covered. But again, going back to the issues, we are not lacking issues as an industry, whether it's infrastructure funding, lead service replacement line, cybersecurity, we talked about that, physical security. These issues are so critically important because, at the end of the day, when you look at the water delivery system in our country, we are the only public utility service consumers ingest. So if we don't get it right at the treatment level, we don't get it right at the distribution level, it becomes a public health crisis. And that's why we try to stay ahead of this, because at the end of the day, the delivery of our service is about public health. It's about serving the public interest, as NARUC would say. So it's an exciting time to be in the sector.
So let's get to something that you mentioned before. You talked about infrastructure. So where are we headed in terms of the infrastructure? Because that's a big issue.
So as you recall, when I was NARUC president, working with you and other team members at NARUC, one of my agendas was infrastructure and workforce development, how the two are so critically important. Well, the infrastructure, the water infrastructure is really now becoming front and center in the conversation in state capitals. Governor Hogan in Maryland, Governor DeSantis in Florida, Governor Whitmer in Michigan. You're just, there are these water issues, whether it's red tide in Florida, Chesapeake Bay watershed in Maryland, Governor Whitmer dealing with the post fallout from Flint. It really has run the gamut. Water scarcity issues west of the Mississippi, so western governors are dealing with, as the Colorado River Basin is drying up and the snow melts through climate are getting a lot less. So these are issues, we talked about it in one of our earlier panels, this whole issue of water grid resiliency and how important it is. So for us going forward, I think it's going to be critically important as an industry that we continue to educate and work with public utility commissioners on really developing a value proposition for how investing in infrastructure will yield safe, reliable, affordable service. And by the way, I also believe this, where my economic development is when you have a good water system, it is a huge attraction to people wanting to relocate to an area and people who want to expand their businesses.
Sure. And as a former NARUC president and as a former commissioner, what do you get out of coming to the NARUC meetings in general? What's the value? Is there still a value for you today?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. First of all, it's always intellectually stimulating to be here. Obviously, you all do great work bringing so many different thought leaders together from telecom to gas to electric to, here we are. I'm looking across the way. Plug in America, Duke Energy's here, Itron. So for me, you learn a lot. The other powerful takeaway is the networking that takes place here. As you know, and we're both very passionate about NARUC, and once you're part of the fraternity, you're always part of the fraternity. Right. But as I remember sitting down with new commissioners coming in and doing the orientation, the new commissioner orientation, you get back what you put into it. And whether you want to be a committee chairman, you want to go on the board of directors, you want to get involved in international, NARUC provides you that entree, but you have to engage in that. And so you see it here today in the hot topics that have been covered. You see it in the attendance. You see it in the I call it the business literacy that takes place here at these meetings. It's so robust, it's so stimulating, and it's really what kind of, you harken back to our state experience. That's why state policies are really driving outcomes in lieu of federal action. Okay. And that's a good thing, because state public utility commissions are at the forefront of that.
And you've seen a lot in your career as a regulator, as a commissioner, as our former president, and then as a FERC commissioner. So, of course, you know that we have an incoming president in November. Yep. So what advice would you give to our incoming president?
The words of wisdom speech.
Yes.
Well, I would start with, first of all, it's a very demanding job. As I use the example, it's like you're driving a Ferrari that's owned by NARUC, and you have it's a wonderful driverless vehicle, meaning the people who are really helping you are people like yourself, Michelle, Greg. The entire NARUC staff is there to help you be successful in your next year. Your next homework assignment is to develop your vision for the next year, your theme.
Yes,
that's where
important.
you obviously come in. And then, prepare yourself for a very rigorous schedule. A travel schedule. You are the forward-facing representative of this incredible organization, and you're out there internationally, nationally, really talking up not only your vision but what the organization's working on, right. and be a good custodial leader of that mission. And more importantly, and I said this with a young family, work-life balance. Right. you gotta know how to delegate things to other commissioners who can help you when you can't make all of the events that could be put upon you as NARUC president. Enjoy it. It's a very fast year, but it is an incredible career milestone to be president of NARUC. I mean, I look back on it. If you were to ask me in 2008, when I was a newly minute commissioner, that I would ever become president of NARUC, or when I was in college or middle school, you ever think you're going to become NARUC president? Some of my classmates might have laughed at me. But the reality is, it's such a wonderful organization. And again, to go back to my earlier point, you get back what you put in. That dividend to me has been paid like 18 to 20-fold because of the relationships. So that's my words of wisdom. Take them for what they're worth, but I think they are worthwhile tidbits to take upon when you're embarking on this incredible experience.
Well, thank you so much for coming to chat with us.
Always good to be with you. I love the podcast idea, by the way. I love it. It's just a great way to spice up the conference. So kudos on pulling this off.
Well, thank you, and thank you again for your personal support, professional support, and also the support of NAWC as one of our sponsors.
Well, thank you. As I like to say, goodwill begets goodwill. So NAWC being part of this is it's good for us as an industry to support the work that's being done here at NARUC.
That's right. So, thank you again.
Thank you, Regina.